On a remote stretch of Northern California coastline, two sleeping bags rested quietly on the sand. Inside were 22-year-old Lindsay Cutshall and her fiancé, 26-year-old Jason Allen. Each had been shot once in the head at close range. Their red Ford Tempo, along with cash, credit cards, and personal belongings, remained untouched nearby. No witnesses, no struggle, and the killer even retrieved the shell casings from a .45-70 caliber Marlin lever-action rifle, leaving investigators with nothing but questions. For over 15 years, the town of Jenner was left searching for answers. The crime scene itself would set the tone for what became one of California's most baffling cold cases. When authorities arrived at Fishhead Beach, they faced a crime scene that offered little in the way of explanation. The area was remote and difficult to access, a mile north of Jenner, with only rugged trails leading in and out. On the morning of August 18, 2004, a sheriff's helicopter first spotted two sleeping bags near the edge of a bluff. A park ranger was sent down to investigate and discovered the bodies of a young man and woman, lying side by side as if still asleep, facing the ocean. The tranquility of the scene was striking. There were no signs of a struggle, no overturned belongings, just the two sleeping bags in undisturbed sand. A preliminary forensic examination was conducted on the beach. Both victims, later identified as Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen, had each been shot once in the head at close range. The wounds suggested the attack was swift and calculated, likely occurring while the couple slept. The sand around them showed no evidence of a struggle or attempt to flee. Investigators searched for any indication that the victims had been aware of their attacker, footprints, drag marks, or scattered items, but found none. The lack of defensive wounds on their bodies further supported the idea that neither Lindsay nor Jason saw the attack coming. The coroner's examination would confirm there was no evidence of sexual assault or robbery. Nearby, deputies located the couple's red Ford Tempo parked along the beach access trail. The car was unlocked, and like the crime scene, appeared untouched. Inside, investigators found the couple's wallets with cash and credit cards, a camera, and their Bibles. Nothing of value was missing. These details allowed detectives to rule out robbery as a motive, narrowing the possibilities, but also deepening the mystery. If theft was not the purpose, then the reason for the murders was something far less obvious. The investigation revealed another unsettling detail. The killer had intentionally retrieved the shell casings from the firearm used in the attack. This deliberate act removed a key clue that could have helped identify the weapon and potentially the perpetrator. The absence of shell casings, combined with the lack of physical evidence, suggested a level of planning and awareness of forensic procedures. This was not a random or impulsive act, but the work of someone who knew how to leave as little trace as possible. The remote location of Fishhead Beach complicated the investigation further. The area was not a designated campground, and camping was technically prohibited. The couple's presence there was not widely known, making it unlikely that they were specifically targeted by someone who followed them. Detectives learned that Lindsay and Jason had been directed to the beach by a local surf shop owner after other campgrounds were full. This detail indicated they were unfamiliar with the area and unaware of any risks associated with camping at such an isolated spot. As investigators gathered what little evidence they could, the scene continued to offer more questions than answers. There was no indication of any personal conflict, no sign of a robbery gone wrong, and no evidence to suggest that the couple had encountered anyone with harmful intentions before that night. The lack of motive, witnesses, and physical evidence left the Sonoma County Sheriff's Department with a case that was as confounding as it was tragic. With the facts at the scene providing so few leads, detectives shifted their focus to understanding who Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen were, and what had brought them to this isolated stretch of coastline in the first place. Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen's story began far from the California coastline. Lindsay Christine Cutshall grew up surrounded by the stillness of the Ohio countryside, in a small place, Fresno, Ohio. She was born on September 9, 1981, into a loving, faith-filled home where her father, Pastor Chris Cutshall, and her mother Kathy raised her and her sister to see the world not as something to take from, but something to give to. From a young age, Lindsay was drawn to the idea of missions. She would say things like, "I want to help people in faraway places," with the sincerity only a child could muster. And yet, she meant every word. She was homeschooled, close to her family, and carried herself with a calm, almost unshakable peace. She loved nature, rolling hills, quiet forests, starry skies. She journaled, hiked, prayed, and dreamed big, but never loudly. Jason Scott Allen came into the world a few years earlier, on May 16, 1978, in Edison, New Jersey, before his family moved to Zeeland, Michigan, a small conservative town near the Lake Michigan shore. The oldest of 3 kids, Jason grew up with a quiet sense of responsibility and a deeply reflective spirit. He was the kind of guy who stood out without trying to, tall, soft-spoken, with a long ponytail and an easy laugh. Jason was never drawn to crowds or chaos. He preferred campfires to clubs and mountains to malls. His calling was in the wild. Jason loved camping, guiding teens through whitewater rapids and rugged trails. In 2002, their paths crossed at Appalachian Bible College in West Virginia. Lindsay was the new girl. Jason had already found his stride there, immersed in outdoor ministry.
The lifestyle that he lived, he really didn't think he'd ever find a girl that would want to share that with him.
So he basically found the woman of his dreams. Is that what he did?
Yes, he did.
The two were drawn to each other almost immediately, not out of infatuation, but something deeper. They talked about faith, their dreams, the people they wanted to serve. 6 weeks after they met, Jason nervously asked Lindsay's father if he could marry her.
About 6 weeks after they had met, he had actually asked me for her hand in marriage. Once we got to know Jason better, we realized that he was the right guy for her and they were a great match.
He was so anxious, he had to pause to get a glass of water before finishing the sentence. But the answer was yes. They were engaged by the spring of 2004, with a wedding planned for September in Lindsay's hometown, her father set to officiate. In mid-August, the couple planned a short trip up the Northern California coast, a final adventure before their wedding. They left the camp on Friday, August 13, 2004, intending to return by Sunday evening.
It was just the kind of area that they would have loved to spend some time in. And Jason loved the beauty of God's creation, and that was a beautiful area.
Their absence was quickly noticed when they failed to show up for work. Kathy Cutshall later recalled the moment she learned her daughter was missing, saying, "Something's not right." The couple's reliability made their disappearance all the more troubling to friends and family. Investigators traced the route of their trip using credit card receipts and witness reports. Records showed that Lindsay and Jason spent time in San Francisco, making several small purchases. After leaving the city, they traveled north through Sonoma County, passing through towns such as Gurneville, Sebastopol, and Forestville. Witnesses remembered seeing Lindsay's distinctive red 1992 Ford Tempo along the way, suggesting the couple took their time, enjoying the scenery and the small towns dotting the coast. Their journey eventually brought them to Bodega, where they stopped at a local surf shop. Authorities believe they asked for advice on where to camp, as many of the official campgrounds were full that weekend due to the summer crowds. With no available sites, they were likely directed to Fishhead Beach near Jenner, a remote, picturesque stretch between Russian Gulch and the mouth of the Russian River. The location was beautiful, but isolated, accessible only by a steep trail. Camping there was technically illegal, but for Lindsay and Jason, the promise of a quiet night by the ocean may have outweighed any concerns. On the evening of August 14th, they arrived at Fishhead Beach. There was no evidence to suggest they were aware of any danger. Their car was left parked along the access trail, and they set up their sleeping bags side by side on the sand, facing the ocean. The couple's Bibles were found with their belongings, a quiet reminder of how central their faith was to their lives. For Lindsay and Jason, this was meant to be a peaceful end to their road trip before returning to their responsibilities at camp. Authorities found nothing in their backgrounds to suggest they were involved in risky behavior or had any connections that might have put them in harm's way. Their lives revolved around ministry, adventure, and each other. The decision to camp on Fishhead Beach was not unusual for two people accustomed to the outdoors, but the remoteness of the spot made them vulnerable in ways they could not have anticipated. Their final night together was spent in a place that, while beautiful, offered no protection from the threat that would find them. The background of Lindsay and Jason, devoted and kind, left investigators with even fewer answers. The absence of motive or apparent enemies only deepened the mystery. With personal histories that offered no clues, detectives had to turn to the few physical traces left behind at the scene, hoping that these might reveal what personal details could not. Attention soon centered on the weapon used in the killings, a detail that offered the only concrete direction for investigators. Ballistics analysis of the fatal bullets revealed they had been fired from a MrBallen Model 1894 lever-action rifle chambered for .45-70 government. This was a powerful firearm, more commonly used for hunting large game than for any crime. Its presence at a homicide scene in Sonoma County was highly unusual, and the specific caliber made the weapon stand out even more. The .45-70 cartridge is known for its stopping power and is not a typical choice for self-defense or random violence. The MrBallen Model 1894 itself was a distinctive rifle, favored by hunters for its reliability and accuracy. According to the findings, the killer had chosen a weapon that was rare in the region. Investigators considered whether the gun had been modified, as some reports suggested a sawed-off barrel, which would make the rifle more concealable and easier to handle at close range. This detail, while never officially confirmed, was consistent with the calculated nature of the attack. The close-range shots and the lethal efficiency pointed to someone with experience handling firearms and a clear intent to avoid detection. Detectives initially saw the rarity of the rifle as a potential advantage. They hoped that tracking down owners of such a unique firearm would lead to a suspect. Investigators canvassed hundreds of gun records for that rare MrBallen, but no match emerged. They checked sales logs, spoke with local gun shop owners, and reached out to hunting clubs in the area. Despite this effort, the search yielded nothing that could be connected to the killings at Fishhead Beach. The weapon, and its owner, remained out of reach. A critical setback came from the discovery that no spent shell casings were found at the scene. Ballistics experts confirmed the absence of casings, indicating the killer had collected them to thwart forensic matching. This action was not accidental. Shell casings can be vital in linking a firearm to a crime through the unique markings left by the gun's firing mechanism. By removing them, the perpetrator eliminated the possibility of tying a recovered MrBallen rifle to the bullets found in Lindsay and Jason's bodies. It was a deliberate move, suggesting the killer had a working knowledge of forensic procedures and intended to leave as little evidence as possible. The lack of other physical evidence further complicated the investigation. The crime scene yielded no fingerprints, no foreign DNA, and no unidentified fibers. There were no signs of a struggle, no trace of the killer's presence beyond the violence itself. Lindsay and Jason were found in their sleeping bags, with their belongings undisturbed. The car parked nearby was unlocked, and nothing had been stolen. This combination of a rare weapon, careful removal of evidence, and a lack of motive made the investigation especially challenging. Detectives could not determine whether the killer was a local with specialized knowledge or someone simply passing through who happened to possess such a weapon. The calculated nature of the crime led some investigators to believe the perpetrator had either committed similar acts before or had taken the time to learn how to avoid detection. As months went by without progress, the rifle itself became a symbol of the case's elusiveness. It was dubbed the ghost rifle among those working the investigation, a weapon that seemed to appear from nowhere and then vanish, leaving behind only questions. The inability to trace the gun or its owner left authorities with no solid suspects and no clear path forward. With the investigation stalled and the weapon's trail cold, uncertainty began to settle over the community. The lack of answers and the knowledge that such a calculated killer remained unidentified created a sense of unease. In the absence of official breakthroughs, speculation and rumor started to fill the void. Along the Northern California coast, the story of Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen became woven into the daily lives of Jenner's residents. The unsolved murders unsettled the town, transforming familiar places into reminders of what had happened. The case lingered in conversations, at the local cafe, and in quiet exchanges between neighbors. People who once left their doors unlocked began to look over their shoulders. One resident described how a simple twig, snap in the woods, could make her heart race, a constant reminder that safety was no longer guaranteed. Rumors and theories filled the void left by the lack of answers. The most persistent centered on the idea of a reclusive survivalist, someone living off the land in the hills above Jenner. Locals spoke of a mountain man, a figure known for his isolation and unpredictable behavior. The crime's details seemed to fit this narrative. The use of a powerful hunting rifle, the knowledge of remote terrain, and the deliberate removal of shell casings. These were not the actions of an opportunistic thief or a passing stranger. Instead, they pointed to someone comfortable in the wilderness, someone who might resent outsiders and know how to disappear without a trace. Law enforcement worked to address these fears, but progress was slow. Investigators considered whether the killer might have been a drifter or transient, possibly responsible for other unsolved crimes along the coast. One name surfaced: Joseph Burgess, a known drifter with a violent history. However, in 2009, DNA evidence ruled him out as a suspect in the Jenner Beach murders. With no other clear connections to similar crimes, detectives found themselves back at the beginning, facing a crime that appeared as random as it was brutal. In May 2006, nearly 2 years after the murders, the Sonoma County Sheriff's Department took the unusual step of releasing new evidence to the public. Investigators hoped that sharing these details might jog someone's memory or bring forward a crucial tip. Among the items were images of poems carved into driftwood and an empty 40-ounce bottle of Camo beer, a rare brand brewed in Wisconsin. The poems and writings, found near a driftwood hut close to the crime scene, were described as dark and cryptic. The hope was that someone might recognize the handwriting or the style of the poems, or recall seeing the uncommon beer in the area. Despite these efforts, no new leads emerged. The evidence only deepened the mystery, becoming another layer in a case already thick with unanswered questions. The authorities also maintained a $50,000 reward for information leading to an arrest and conviction. The size of the reward, underscored the desperation of both investigators and the community. For 13 years, the search for answers continued. The trail was cold, and the identity of the person who brought violence to the quiet shore remained a mystery. But then, a new crime in the forests of Sonoma County would bring the investigation back to life. March 24, 2017. A fatal shooting at a family home in Forestville led to the arrest of 38-year-old Sean Gallen for the murder of his brother, Seamus Gallen. Deputies responding to the scene that evening found Seamus dead from a gunshot wound, and Sean was taken into custody without incident. A rifle was recovered from Sean's vehicle, and investigators quickly noted the unusual nature of the case. There were no clear signs of a serious altercation beforehand, and the motive remained uncertain. The Gallen brothers were known in the local community, and their troubled history had drawn attention in the past, but the violent culmination of their relationship still came as a shock. While Sean Gallen awaited charges for his brother's killing, detectives began to re-examine his connection to the long-cold Jenner Beach case.
Developing news, the Sonoma County Sheriff's Department has announced a suspect in a 13-year-old cold case. It centers around the murders of an engaged couple who visited the coastal town of Jenner in 2004. KPIX5 reporter Ann Makovic is live in the newsroom with more details.
And the man now accused in that murder has no real connection to the couple shot to death on the beach. Investigators call it a random crime. Sean Gallen, a 38-year-old man from Forestville, is in jail accused of killing a young couple from the Midwest while they slept on a beach near Jenner in Sonoma County. It happened in 2004.
This shocked the community of Jenner. It was traumatic for them.
The case had been cold for 13 years, and then a few weeks ago, Gallen was arrested accused of killing his brother. Investigators started questioning him about the Jenner killings, and they say he had information that only the killer would have known. Today, they say they are confident they have their man.
This case, with how random it was and these families, it's especially joyful to get to this point.
Jason Allen and Lindsay Cutshall, both in their 20s, were working at a Christian camp in El Dorado County. They were on a 3-day trip to the coast when they were killed. Investigators say Gallen was considered a person of interest in the couple's murder early on, but they won't say why. A Facebook page that bears his name has several lewd posts and shows what appears to be an interest in war in the Middle East. Investigators say they are continuing to follow up on leads to build their case. They will then present their report to the district attorney. Live in the newsroom, Ann Makovic, KPIX5.
Now, with him in custody for a violent crime, investigators saw an opportunity to revisit old leads. They questioned Gallen about the murders of Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen. At first, he denied involvement, but as the interviews continued, Gallen's demeanor shifted. He began to share information about the Jenner case, details that had never been made public. According to Sheriff Steve Freitas, Gallen provided specifics that only the killer could have known. He described approaching Lindsay and Jason as they camped on the sand, leaving the area, then returning later with his Marlin 45-70 lever-action rifle. He recounted where he shot each victim at close range and explained how he collected the spent shell casings to avoid leaving evidence. Gallen told detectives he hid the casings in blackberry bushes near the scene, a detail that matched the original forensic assessment. Investigators searched the area, based on Gallen's directions, and recovered the casings, definitively linking him to the crime. He also correctly identified the rare model of rifle used, which had been a focal point of the investigation for over a decade. As detectives pressed for a motive, Gallen's answers were unsettling and offered little satisfaction. He claimed he snapped on the night of the murders and that he had to do it. He also spoke of hearing voices and feeling tormented, suggesting a pattern of mental instability. Gallen expressed resentment toward the couple for camping on what he considered his beach, citing the posted sign barring camping, but this explanation did not clarify his actions. The lack of a coherent or rational motive mirrored the randomness and senselessness that had frustrated investigators for years. Further investigation into Gallen's background revealed a long history of violence and disturbing behavior. He was well known in the area for his survivalist lifestyle, fascination with weapons, and erratic conduct. His criminal record included a 2009 conviction for shooting a homemade arrow into a car and a 2004 attempted murder charge involving a package bomb. Psychologists who evaluated Gallen described him as paranoid, with loose associations and bizarre thinking. He often referenced a dramatic change in his mental state after taking LSD at age 21, telling family and detectives that he never felt the same afterward. His online presence, marked by incoherent and sometimes graphic posts, reinforced the image of a deeply troubled individual. The investigation also uncovered significant actions by Gallen's father, David Gallen. In 2004, after Sean was jailed on an unrelated weapons charge, he contacted his father and asked him to dispose of his firearms. David complied, later admitting he did so out of fear for his son's stability. Among the guns discarded was the Marlin rifle used in the Jenner Beach murders. Years later, David Gallen died by suicide. Sean would later tell detectives he believed his father's suspicion that he was involved in the killings contributed to David's death, adding another layer of tragedy to the case. Gallen's confession, backed by physical evidence and knowledge only the perpetrator could possess, finally provided closure for the investigation. The elusive figure who had haunted the community for years was now identified. The connection between the violence within Gallen's own family and the long unsolved murders on the coast underscored the depth of his instability and the breadth of his hidden crimes. With Gallen's admission and the corroborating evidence, authorities could at last bring the case to its conclusion. The impact of his actions, however, would be felt far beyond the courtroom.
Again, this happened in 2004, and I remember the impact this had on this community and up north. Now, today in court, the mother of one of the victims asked Sean Gallen if he had received the Bible that the family had given him, sent him. He then responded, yes. That mother then said, read it.
Lindsay Cutshall's mother brought the dress her daughter was supposed to wear on her wedding day. But she and her fiancé, Jason Allen, were shot 1 month before on this beach in Jenner. Kathy Cutshall showed it in court to Sean Michael Gallen, the confessed killer.
They had a future. They had a future in ministry. They had a future in their marriage. They had a future with us, my grandchildren. The emptiness of this dress, I think, is what I wanted to show.
The young Midwest couple, she was 22 and he 26, were counselors at a religious camp in the Sierra. They decided to take off for a few days and ended up camping on Fish Head Beach. It was August 2004. For years, investigators and the family believed both were sleeping when they were shot. But during sentencing today, it was revealed that Lindsay apparently knew for a brief moment what was going on.
We always suspected that she was murdered second because of how cowardly this act was. But then to hear that she actually sat up from the killer himself, that was hard to hear.
Gallen, who is now 40 years old, only confessed to the murders after he was arrested in 2017 for the shooting death of his brother inside the home they shared with their mother. To this day, Gallen has never given a reason for shooting the couple. In court today, his attorney said his client has had mental health issues, and in 2001, Gallen took a large dose of LSD. According to his family, he has not been the same since. He also tried to kill another man in June 2004 by planting a bomb on his car. Both had had a previous altercation. The man's wife was injured instead. Today, Gallen was also sentenced for that attempted murder. Outside of the courtroom, Lindsay's father showed us a ring he now wears to remember his daughter.
Lindsay and Jason finally had justice today. Sean Gallen won't see the light of day again. The sad thing is that nothing brings Lindsay and Jason back.
And Jason Allen's parents were not here today. He is, of course, the other victim. Gallen's mother was not in court either. Remember, she has lost two sons in essence. One, of course, was shot in 2017 and killed, and Gallen, who will spend the rest of his life in prison.
On July 15th, 2019, Sean Gallen was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 94 years for other crimes, after pleading no contest a month earlier. As part of the plea agreement, the district attorney did not seek the death penalty. Both the Cutshall and Allen families spoke of forgiveness, guided by their faith. They stated that they would not let Gallen's violence define their lives. Sheriff Steve Freitas echoed their message, emphasizing the importance of hope and persistence in seeking justice. Thanks so much for watching. If you're enjoying this video and want to see more, consider supporting us on Patreon, and you'll get access to exclusive content and more. Just head over to Patreon and click the link in the description to join the community. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next episode.